Someone asks you what you're doing for your birthday, and you say the thing that apparently confuses everyone. Nothing, it's just another day. And suddenly, you're the strange one. Your friends look at you sideways, your family says you're being difficult, someone at work insists you have to at least do something. As if the calendar flipping to a specific date requires a performance, a cake, a gathering, proof that you exist and are grateful for it. But you don't feel sad about it. You don't feel lonely. You don't feel like you're missing anything. If anything, you feel fine. Quietly, genuinely fine. And that confuses people even more than the original answer did. So what's actually going on? Are you broken? Are you secretly hurting? Are you more evolved than everyone around you? Or is something else happening entirely? Something with a name, a mechanism, a psychological explanation that most people never hear. Today I want to walk you through exactly why some people treat their birthday like any other day. Not one reason, several. Because the people who say it's just another day are not all saying it for the same reason. And which one is yours might tell you more about yourself than you expected. Let's start with the group nobody talks about directly. The ones who stopped celebrating not because they chose to, but because experience taught them it was safer not to expect anything. Think about this. When you were young, a birthday was a prediction. Your brain, without being asked, built an image of what the day would feel like. The attention, the acknowledgement, the sense that for one day the people around you would make it clear that you matter. And for some people, that prediction came true. But for others, it didn't. Not once, not dramatically, just quietly, repeatedly. The day arrived and fell short of the version they had imagined. Maybe people forgot. Maybe the celebration felt hollow. Maybe the one person whose acknowledgement would have meant something said nothing. In 1967, psychologist Martin Seligman discovered something that changed how we understand human behavior. He called it learned helplessness. When a person experiences repeated disappointment in situations they cannot control, their brain eventually stops generating hope for that situation. Not because they gave up, because the brain is efficient. It stopped predicting a reward that the evidence suggested would not arrive. And neuroscientists Schultz, Diane, and Montague showed that your dopamine system, the system responsible for anticipation and excitement, doesn't just respond to good things happening. It responds to the gap between what you expected and what you received. When expectations are repeatedly unmet, the brain quietly closes that gap the only way it can. It stops expecting. So when someone says it's just another day and there's a flatness underneath the words, listen carefully. That sentence wasn't born from apathy. It was built from a younger version of themselves who hoped enough times to finally learn that hoping hurt more than letting go. And the calm in their voice? That's not coldness. That's the sound of someone who learned to protect themselves the only way available to them. But not everyone who skips their birthday carries something heavy. The second group looks completely different. These are the people who genuinely forgot it was coming. Not because they're suppressing anything, not because they're protecting themselves, because their brain is running approximately 17 things at once, and a birthday simply did not make the priority list. Psychologists call this time blindness, a phenomenon particularly common in people with highly active, fast-processing minds. When you are deep inside a project, a deadline, a creative problem, a life that demands full attention, dates blur, weeks blur, the calendar becomes background noise. And a birthday, which requires no action, solves no problem, produces no deliverable, gets quietly filed under not urgent, right next to the dentist appointment rescheduled 3 times, and the drawer of things that will definitely be dealt with soon. These people aren't avoiding their birthday. They're not making a philosophical statement. They simply looked up one day and realized the date had passed with the same mild surprise they feel when they notice it's already Thursday. Oh, was that this week? It's not that they don't value themselves, it's that they value so many things so intensely that one specific calendar date slips through the net. Sound familiar? And then there is the third group, the ones who didn't forget, the ones who aren't carrying old hurt, the ones who looked at the entire concept of birthday celebration and genuinely, quietly said, "I'm good." Not as a defense, not as performance, not to seem unbothered, just actually good. And if that sounds like you, here is what the science says about it. Psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan spent decades studying what they called self-determination theory. Their central finding was this: The most psychologically healthy people, the ones with the deepest, most stable sense of well-being, are the ones whose sense of worth comes from inside, not from external events, not from social rituals, not from the confirmation of others, from within. Researcher Philip Brickman identified something he called the hedonic treadmill, the cycle where you chase the next celebration, the next milestone, the next external moment of feeling special, and it never quite lands the way you hoped. Because the moment arrives and then it passes, and you're back where you started, waiting for the next thing to make you feel what you were hoping to feel. The people in this third group stepped off that treadmill, not because they don't enjoy good things, but because they stopped outsourcing the fundamental question, do I matter, to a single day on the calendar. And when you no longer need the cake and the gathering and the notifications to confirm that your existence is valid, something shifts. The birthday doesn't disappear, it just stops carrying so much weight. It becomes what it actually is, a date, a lovely date, perhaps, but not a referendum on your worth. Because not everyone who says I don't need it actually doesn't need it, and I think you already know that. Psychologist Jennifer Crocker at the Michigan University studied something she called contingencies of self-worth, the specific conditions under which people feel valuable or worthless. And she found something quietly important. Some people disconnect from celebrations not because they're free, but because they're afraid. Afraid that if they allow themselves to want it, if they let the hope form, if they admit that it matters, and then it doesn't go the way they needed, it will confirm something they have spent a long time trying not to believe about themselves, that they don't matter enough for people to make an effort, that they are easier to forget than to remember, that the silence on that day means something true. So they opt out, not from strength, from protection. And here is the distinction that matters. Someone who genuinely doesn't need the celebration feels nothing in particular when it doesn't happen. Someone who is protecting themselves from the possibility of disappointment feels a very specific kind of nothing, the kind that has edges, the kind you notice only when you're honest in the quiet moments. So, if you're watching this, ask yourself the question as honestly as you can. Is it freedom or is it armor? Both are real, both make complete sense. Neither makes you broken, but only one of them is actually giving you what you need. There is one more thing I want you to understand, because even for people who have genuinely made peace with their birthday, there can be a subtle undercurrent on that day that doesn't quite match the peace they feel the rest of the year. A vague heaviness, a low-level wistfulness, something that arrives without being invited and doesn't fully explain itself. Researchers at Johns Hopkins studying emotional memory found something that explains this precisely. They called it the anniversary effect. Your brain doesn't simply record memories, it codes them with emotional tags. And when the calendar returns to a date associated with a strong emotional experience, even years, even decades later, the brain doesn't just remember the event, it reinstates the emotional state. Not always consciously, sometimes just as a texture, a mood with no obvious source, a quiet that feels slightly different from regular quiet. Your calendar moves on, your brain moves differently. It doesn't forget the year the party didn't happen, the year the person you needed most said nothing, the year you smiled and said you were fine and meant it and didn't mean it at the same time. That younger version of you is still in there, not broken, not stuck, just present. And acknowledging that, not to fix it, not to perform grief about it, but simply to recognize it, is one of the quieter forms of kindness you can offer yourself. So here is where we are. Some people treat their birthday like any other day because life taught them that hope is expensive and quiet is safer. Some people treat it like any other day because their mind is so full of living that dates become background noise. Some people treat it like any other day because they genuinely, deeply do not need an external event to confirm that your life is worth celebrating. And some people treat it like any other day because wanting it and not getting it is a risk they decided a long time ago they would not take again. None of these people are broken. None of them are cold. None of them are incapable of joy or connection or love. They are people who found, each in their own way, for their own reasons, that a single day on the calendar does not define the value of the life being lived. And if you have spent years being told that your relationship with your birthday means something is wrong with you, I want to offer you something you may not have been given before. You are allowed to feel fine about it. You are allowed to let the day pass without ceremony, without performance, without proof. You are allowed to know your own worth without a gathering to confirm it. And you are allowed, if somewhere underneath the fine there is something smaller and quieter that still wishes things had been different, to acknowledge that too. Both things can be true at once. The peace and the wistfulness, the freedom and the old armor, the genuine okay and the younger self who once hoped for more. You belong to a quiet group of people who learned, one way or another, to carry their own sense of themselves without waiting for a calendar to hand it to them. That is not nothing. In a world that constantly tells you to perform your joy, to document your celebrations, to prove your life is worth celebrating, choosing quiet is actually one of the more honest things a person can do. Nothing was ever wrong with you. The day was just a day, and you were more than a day. If this found you on the right day, or any day, leave a comment, even just a word.